and that is we are removing the West School signage from the agenda. They actually, the donation came in under $5,000, so they actually don't need board approval. So we're going to remove that. Is there a motion to approve that amendment? Brendan, second. Julie, all in favor? Motion to approve the amended agenda. Dan, second. Erica, all in favor? Great, thank you. Next is to approve the minutes from the July 18th meeting. May I have a motion? Penny, second. Phil, all in favor? Thank you. Next is comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Is there anyone wishing to address the board this evening? Okay, just please proceed to the podium and just state your name, please.
Hi, I'm Mickey Porta, 204 Park Street. I'm speaking tonight for myself and about 130 parents, grandparents, students, and taxpayers in this community who believe that DEI must be a priority in our schools. We want to clarify why that's important for our students and families, as misinformation around critical race theory is needlessly confusing around this issue. Equity is not equality. Equality is about being the same, whereas equity recognizes differences, takes differences into account, and tries to provide the support needed for all students to realize better outcomes. Diversity is the ways that people are both alike and different, whether visibly in external attributes or internally in characteristics that aren't readily seen. When we recognize, value, and embrace diversity, we're recognizing, valuing, and embracing the uniqueness of each child. Inclusion means creating an environment where diverse children are welcome. They're respected in a supportive space, valued for their abilities, experiences, and perspectives, have equal access to resources and opportunities, and can contribute fully to the school community. Critical race theory was originally developed decades ago by scholars trying to understand why significant victories in civil rights cases didn't have more positive results for Black people here. Today, it has been mischaracterized as a way of making groups or individuals feel guilty, when in fact it incorporates missing information in the historical record. It's not about feelings, but data, adding pieces to the puzzle so that a fuller picture can take shape. We want a school community where all students, staff members, and families can thrive, where we encourage fearless learning and critical thinking, and where instead of anger, divisiveness, and division, we embrace curiosity, understanding, and growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Ethan Yang. This board was organized on the principles of a dedication to education and knowledge and the hopes the current generation has for the next. As such, I would hope that those people, the future leaders of this country, remained at the front of our minds and not a certain crowd of people who would believe that CRT, a graduate-level research process that I was not even introduced to until the very last day of my 200-level REM politics course at Duke University, would ever be taught to third graders. I would hope that we would allow neither a hypothetical mob nor a vilified, yet ultimately irrelevant research framework to cloud or inform the decisions made in this board and in this town over the coming years. Because if our DEI program, a program still in its infancy, not even fully alive, and, well, yet is to be negatively tampered with, diluted, or otherwise damaged, that decision will have lasting ramifications and could potentially plunge an entire generation back into the cycle of ignorance that has long gripped our nation since the Daughters of the Confederacy began to spread Confederate propaganda through the children's textbooks in the late 19th century. Growing up, I knew that it was a commonly held perception that private schools were somehow better than public schools, but I never really believed it. I never saw something or experienced something at NCPS that I thought could be better or should be better. That was until I was fortunate enough to spend 1 year at the Taft School in Watertown, Connecticut. While they weren't perfect either, there were still many aspects of their journey that New Canaan can seek to replicate. Not only was the student body diverse, the teachers were as well. There were announcements, workshops, and special events with professionals covering all subjects, from race and gender to STEM, business, and even cinematography. There was an appointed head of DEI, Mr. Prince, who I spent a lot of time with as he was my offensive line coach and my advisor. I tell you this because I hear a lot of talk about how we don't know what we're doing, we don't know what policy to implement and which ones to forget. And for that reason, I point you to the simple answer. we must hire a DEI expert. Even if you don't do any of the helpful yet admittedly costly things I just mentioned, hire a professional person who can help our institutions and guide them towards the right thing. Because at the end of the day, all we want to do is get it right. I implore you, get it right.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Valentina Zamora, and I graduated from New Canaan High School as part of the class of 2021. I spoke to the Board of Education in 2020 as part of a coalition of alumni and current students of the New Canaan Public Schools to introduce a set of diversity and inclusion goals designed to enhance professional development by increasing cultural responsiveness and awareness training and improve student education by providing more culturally responsive literature within the school curriculum. Today, I stand here to implore you to maintain the diversity and inclusion goals as they were implemented. Reflecting on my experience at the New Canaan Public Schools, I can see definite gaps in the diversity of my curriculum. For example, the curriculum of my AP American History class barely scratches the surface of the history of Indigenous Americans, despite covering over 500 years of American history. Furthermore, the inclusion of minority authors in the English curriculum was extremely limited, only bothering to cover the more famous Black and minority authors, such as Frederick Douglass. These gaping holes in the New Canaan curriculum have serious implications. When New Canaan students graduate, they will enter either college or the workforce. In both spheres, they will be communicating and collaborating with diverse individuals, and will have to navigate issues faced by Black, Indigenous, Latino, and minority individuals that stem from historical events. By rolling back these diversity and inclusion goals, you are placing the students of New Canaan in a bubble separate from the real world, thereby inhibiting their ability to succeed following their graduation. Some may believe in a definition of success that doesn't include a diverse and inclusive education. However, I define success as having the ability to understand and interact with the world, environment, and individuals around us. How are we supposed to understand the world we live in if we don't learn about how it came to be? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jen Ladduck, 77 Knollwood Lane. I'm really concerned about taking some of the specific DEI language out of our goals. The problem with that for me is that when something isn't in your goals at all, no time or money is directed at it, and even the surrounding language starts to disappear. The political parts of DEI are there, but they're only a small portion of what DEI initiatives cover, including special education programs and other important social and emotional initiatives that are critical as we look for ways to prevent things like suicide and school shootings. The pressure to eliminate DEI goals also completely disregards both state and national standards that our district is judged by. I'm not super fixated on rankings, but a lot of people do care about them. They have a huge effect on property values in our town. Sorry, lost my place. And I do think it's useful to compare any organization or business to its peers to assess strengths and weaknesses. When we're rated, we get all A's except in diversity, where we get C-. The Board of Education has little control over the racial and economic diversity of our students, but it can ensure that programming and curriculum address these areas and improve our scores that way. The schools in our comparison group that are rated higher than us do not outscore us in test scores, academics, athletics, or the arts, but only in DEI. Eliminating DEI from the goals also ignores the consistent feedback from New Canaan High School alumni that the only area they feel ill-prepared for when they leave New Canaan is this specific one. They report feeling like they say the wrong thing and insult people unintentionally because of their lack of knowledge, and that they worry that this puts them at a disadvantage to their peers at school and work. Never mind the actual students of color who consistently report that while they've had many positive experiences as students in New Canaan, they also have many uncomfortable and inappropriate ones around race, specifically. The race part of DEI is really complicated and really hard to deal with. Striking a balance between informing our kids about DEI and keeping their parents comfortable with their schooling is unbelievably difficult. But in my opinion, when you see one glaring weakness when looking at peer school districts and you hear feedback from actual students, You, of course, would look to address it in the district goals, not strip the mere mention of it there. To me, that's just shirking your leadership.
Thank you.
Hello, Monica Capella Camara, 194 Lost District Drive. I'm here. I also wanted to note for the record, I just wanted to confirm that notice was given of the workshop today because some of us weren't aware. Obviously, we don't have to talk about it now. I know there's no back and forth, but I think some of us would really appreciate that, knowing that. I'm here to advocate for keeping DEI as it is currently written in the goals. I did watch last month's meeting, and I was a little bit disturbed about some of the misinformation that I think that some of us are operating from. I think diversity, equity, inclusion on their own, these words are innocuous. I mean, it's political talking points and media sound bites that make them larger than they really are. I think, DEI also is not just about race. I think we're making decisions solely based on race, and that's not the case at all. As Jen said, I mean, some of us are people of color. Some of us, though, also have, these are parents and students in your community who have physical or learning disabilities. We have plenty of autistic kids in our school district. DEI would encompass talking about disabilities, talking about, accepting kids like that. And not even just accepting them, but learning about them. Acceptance comes on its own when you just have the information in front of you. I think it's really hard for me as a person of color. You're talking about, an entire curriculum that affects me, my family, in more ways than one. I'm a woman. That's another DEI issue. I mean, suffrage, women's suffrage, there's such a thing as the gender pay gap, there's a glass ceiling. These things all exist. It's all part of DEI. It's not just race. You are eliminating all of those people, all of those students, and all of those parents from the table when you wipe out diversity, equity, and inclusion. How can you do that? And I don't know what everyone's background is, but if more than 3/4 of you are not POC, why are you making decisions that affect us without consulting us? Nothing about us without us. When I want to know about autism, I go talk to other autistic kids or parents or people who have the skill set and the expertise. I don't know that apart from me seeing women on this board, I don't know that exists here. So I just want to know why you are making these decisions to stamp out this curriculum in its entirety without even consulting the people that it's going to directly affect. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Lauren Connolly Nussbaum, 65 Whiffle Tree Lane. Thank you for having me. New Canaan Public Schools' goal is to graduate students with the knowledge and skills needed to succeed in a dynamic and complex world. To do this, students must be educated in a space that makes diversity, equity, and inclusion an absolute priority. I spoke these same words in 2020. Why are we moving backwards? Why have we removed the language that 800 alumni, parents of alumni, current parents and current students and grandparents signed on to say this must be a priority? We are not moving backwards. I implore you, we must move forwards. I grew up learning that half of life is about showing up. The other half is about what you do when you get there. Let's show up for our kids. Let them know through our written goals, our expressed intent, and our action that they matter, that they, in their diverse beauty, are what makes us as a school district and a town excellent. Let's educate our children and families on the importance of what it means to be seen, heard, celebrated, and included. I have a daughter who is brilliant and hilarious, and she is autistic. And when she goes into her classroom and she brings a book about Temple Grandin, and the class reads it and celebrates it and learns about an autistic person who is a leader and an innovator, she sees herself in that moment, and she sees that the sky is the limit. And the sky is the limit as well for my autistic child when she learns about Mae Jemison, a Black female astronaut. And while my Grace doesn't look like Mae Jemison, she sees a beautiful, brilliant Black woman for whom the sky is the limit. There is nothing dangerous in learning about Temple Grandin and Mae Jemison. DEI work can be developmentally and age appropriate. It doesn't have to be scary, but we have to embrace it together. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing, oh.
Hi, my name is Fatimi Yang, 127 Wellesley Drive. I had the privilege of having 2 kids in the New Canaan public school system. And what I've realized from all that is that as adults, our job is to make room for those kids to express themselves. Not to assume that they are okay because they're managing everything and it seems okay on the superficial level. Including DEI in a great school system that we have, it's not a scary thing. It's a continuity of what New Canaan has promised to the students. DEI means all of us. It doesn't mean color. It doesn't only mean color, I should say. It doesn't only mean physical capacities or abilities. It means all of us looking at each other and accepting each other. If we don't know about each other, we learn about each other. That makes us all better. So please, go back to the original text. What I've noticed online, I have missed a lot of meetings and I have watched some on YouTube. And I'm counting on the minutes to get the update. And online, most of the minutes are not always complete. It's missing the details of what the changes are, and if there's a way to change that, that would be awesome. To discover the changes tonight in the package that I have picked up, it's not the best way to prepare on having a conversation with you as a board, because I feel like I'm just being reactive. When we talk about private school versus public school, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we are a New Canaan community. And as a community, if our kids are in private school or in public school, when they get home, they have to come with a smile and feel like they are included, no matter their form, shape, size, color, orientation, and any other beliefs that they may have. And that's what we have to offer as a public school to our kids. Social economics, in New Canaan, we do have some. And those are the same people that feel not included in our community. And that's something we have to change. It starts with all of us, and it starts also in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Move on to the action items for this evening. We have a donation for the Sachs Outdoor Learning Center. Dr. Lutzy, are you presenting, or I see Mr. Gusich and Elizabeth in the audience there.
Exactly.
So,
I will let them speak.
and
If
Ms.
you'll
Price.
recall,
with a
this-
troop.
and this is
Team
the
Sachs.
project the Board of Ed discussed and approved a meeting ago, maybe 2 meetings ago.
The
End of June?
initial one
Yep.
was in, might have been March,
Okay.
I think, March.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, so this is
Time
a
flies.
quick update on the Sachs Outdoor Learning Center, which we're very grateful for all of the support we've received across the board, both from our parents, our students, our facilities, our facility managers in particular. Since February, we have had a lot of action on this. We had finalized our plans. We've got an Outdoor Learning Center committee. Very grateful that it's not Colleen and I. That's being chaired by former Sachs board members, so we've had a very seamless transition, which is lovely. We went through contractor bids, finalized a contractor. We're using Diane Starr, who also did such a beautiful job on West and East and is starting at the high school. You're sensing a trend. And best of all, the shovels hit the dirt in July. So we are very excited about this. There's actually a fair amount of work that needs to get done in that courtyard when it comes to grading, moving dirt, creating the amphitheater that we spoke about, leveling for the terracing, which is going to be an outdoor classroom space on the other side. What you see, and I think you've got in front of you, are 3 fabulous pictures taken by acclaimed landscape photographer Mr. Gussich, showing the work in progress. So that's where we are. As this project has progressed, this should not be much of a surprise. Prices have gone up, supply chain has gone up, landscapers are in short supply, and inflation. So unsurprisingly, we're seeing a bit of a cost increase from what we expected. We would like to make an additional donation of $50,000 to complete this project and be able to put the finishing touches on it. That is not touching our operating budget from 2022-2023, and nor is it counting on funds we'll hopefully get from Celebrate Sacs in October, our major fundraising event. So that's what I'm coming to ask for your approval tonight, is if we can make an additional donation to finish this up properly.
Great. Thank you for the update. It's helpful. It's very exciting, and I appreciate the support of the PTC to complete this project. It's going to be wonderful for students. So I'll ask for a motion to approve a donation of $50,000 from the Sacs Middle School PTC to supplement the previously approved donation for the Outdoor Learning Center. Penny, second. Dan, all in favor. Thank you. Good luck with finishing the project. Next is a donation from the All Sports Booster Club on the New Canaan High School Summer Strength and Conditioning Program. Do you have anything to add, Dr. Leslie, on that?
Nope, just simply, just what you said. The donations to fund that supervision for the program that happened over the summer. As you know, our student athletes, others, they have the Summer Strength and Conditioning Program, so this will pay the stipends and the salary of the folks that were there.
Great. So I'll ask for a motion to approve a donation of $37,672.50 from the New Canaan All Sports Booster Club to fund the supervision of the summer strength and conditioning activities. Erica, second. Julie, all in favor? Unanimous? Great. Thank you.
And again, a big thank you to the All Sports Booster Club.
Absolutely.
For all of what they do.
Next, we'll move on to reports and recognition, and we have an update on healthier school start times, which is almost go time.
It just about is, yeah. We are less than a week away. Starting Monday, we will be implementing our new times. So our first tier of our grades 7 through 12 will be an 8 o'clock start. Our second tier, which will be our 3 elementary schools, will be an 8:40 start. And then our 5th and 6th grade over at Sacs will be a 9:15 start. And as we mentioned at the last meeting, we are going to continue looking at and working to optimize the runs as much as we can. The Roy's actually in a great mood recently, feeling very good about the work that he's done and about the runs that are going out. So last week, people should have received notification of their bus run, the times, and getting those. And if anyone hasn't and they have children across multiple schools, it's just a glitch in the system we're trying to work out, but I think we've got that figured out. I would encourage everyone to download the app, the Where's the Bus app. We're having great success so far with people sort of testing it and using it and helping with the timing. Also, I know that a few members of the board have been working to come up with some ways to encourage folks to ride the bus, and we've talked about this too, how a few years ago we were encouraging folks to drive if they could, but now we really feel strongly that the system will work best if most people take the bus. And we encourage people to do so because the additional buses we've had to purchase for the healthier start times means generally that the runs are going to be shorter, that students will not be on the bus for as long as they may have been in the past. And our runs were already pretty tight. We're getting a few requests from folks, and just so people understand the way the bus runs work, the bus will go in the same route in the AM and the PM. So if you are the very last child picked up in the morning on the way to school, you are very likely going to be the last child dropped off in the afternoon on the way home, because that's the way that the bus runs. While everybody would love to be the last picked up and the first dropped off, we just can't make that happen, right, in a bus system. So we're receiving some emails from some folks. So just to be clear, we've all become amateur transportation specialists over these last few years, so you know how that all works. I did have a meeting today with Rita from the town council, and we talked about the the buses for the last tier drop-off, so it's the 5th and 6th grade in the afternoon, that 3:45 time. And she was talking with some of the folks who live in the Fieldcrest Village area. And when we ran the buses as a simulation, just so that people get used to the runs, what happened was we had to have a place to stage those buses as they came through, because we're asking them to drive the routes to learn the route. We asked them to stop at every stop and count to 90 and then go on. They didn't do that, right? I mean, it's human nature. It was June. They're running the routes to get to learn them. So the buses queued up quite a bit in that area, that Village Fieldcrest area, because what happens is the 5th and 6th pickup at the end of the day, there's not enough room for all the buses behind Saks all at once. So we have to stage somewhere. So we talked a bit, and she shared their concerns. I shared sort of the logistics of why we need a place to stage the buses. So we agreed that we need a little bit of time to run the system and learn the rhythm of the timing, because it really the buses are significantly impacted by the number of students on them and where they live, where they go, and that just really makes a big difference in the timing. And we just don't know what that's going to be like until we run those routes for a couple of weeks, to be frank. So once we learn that rhythm, we'll continue to look at that and see if there's a different way to have the buses that can't fit behind Saks right at the very beginning, the first wave of dismissal. We're trying to figure out how best to time them. So we just need a little bit of patience as we get the system going to try to figure that out. But we had great conversation about that, and just wanted to make sure the board was aware that we're aware and working through how best to solve that problem. That issue around where do the buses queue. Beyond that, we've spoken with our principals, who have spoken with our campus monitors. Today we had a meeting with the Crisis Advisory Board where we had Deputy Captain DeFederico, our SROs, others there, talking about the traffic flow and how best to get the buses off the lot as quickly as possible. So we'll have our campus monitors and others going out to help to stop some traffic, to get buses off the lots and get them out into the streets. And we're going to be communicating with the gentleman who works the lights at the dismissal as well. As you can imagine, that intersection at Farm and South is a very tricky, busy intersection. So the gentleman who works the lights, if he can hold it right, and we'll communicate through a radio, we can get those buses right through and out. And that should also help us to maybe even find some time between the tiers once we get it down. So it'll take a little time as we do the implementation, but we'll continue to report back to the board, see if we can find some more efficiencies and try to get a little bit tighter, even maybe on that 5-6 start time if we can. Beyond that, I think that, well, when you pulled in high school today, you saw that our buses are now in the front of the building. That's a temporary thing until we just have to stripe the lot. I want to say thanks to Tiger and to the town for getting that paving all done for us. So all of Bandland, as we call it out there, has been paved. Behind the building's been paved. Last year they did the front of the building, so the lot here is in really good shape. I know he was having some challenges with getting folks to do some of the other lots. So I don't have an update on that this time, but we'll talk about that next time, see what we can get done. Sometimes in the 11th hour, we're able to find a contractor to run through who might be able to hit west and do everything we need to do and do some of that stuff over at east as well. So we're scrambling a little bit, but the weather's been good, so hopefully we'll be able to find somebody. And beyond that, as I said, everybody should have gotten their routes, and buses are ready to go. And just for what it's worth, as a quick reminder to the board, we run 100% propane buses. So all of them, we don't use diesel on the road with the buses at all. I know there may be some conversation about incentives to move to an electric bus, but as we've read through the legislation around that, that's really for older diesel buses to get them off the road. So we're a little bit ahead of that with our move to propane, so I don't believe that we're going to be eligible for those incentives. We'll keep an eye on that too over time.
Thanks for the update. Any questions? Go ahead.
Do you have any feedback so far on the before school and after school programs and like participation, and is it where we thought it would be? Is
Sure,
it
a little
slower?
bit. Yeah, we have, we're running early birds at our elementaries now, right? And the 5-6 as well. And then we have that right at school program, that's sort of that new one that's coming in. The enrollment across the board has been about 50. They were looking probably about 3 times that was their expectation coming in. So it's a little bit lower than we thought. We'll keep an eye on it, see if it bounces up as we get a little bit closer. I know that the early bird signups have gone out, and students are starting to sign up for those as well. And that's just the difference there is just the duration of the program. The early bird starts, I think, a little bit later. Most of the students, I think it's only a very small handful over at Saks, actually, for the right at school and the others are the elementaries after school.
Thank you. Next, we have an update on COVID grants. We thought it would be helpful for the board. I know there's been questions, among board members and from the community around ARPA funds and how that money was channeled to the schools. So Dr. Lutzy and Bill Tesper are going to give an update and Dr. Crunty, sorry, an update on where we are and maybe a little background I think would be helpful in terms of how the money. Okay, thank you.
So you should have received a fact sheet about the APSR grant, and certainly that just gives you the background. In the New Canaan Public Schools, we received $1,062,030. And when you look at that amount, there are 5 priority areas in which the money must be spent. So the first priority area is learning acceleration, academic renewal, and student enrichment. 25% of the grant total needs to go to priority number 1. Number 2 is the family and community connections. And number 3 is social, emotional, and mental health of the students and of our school staff. Priority 4 is strategic use of technology, staff development, and the digital divide. And priority 5 is building safe and healthy schools. And the blurbs that are underneath those priority areas describing what each of them are has been taken right from the grant. So that is the language that the state of Connecticut has established, and that's the language that we follow. You may recall last year when we went through this, our understanding was that the grant was going to be for 2 years and that we would have to spend the money by the end of 23. It's come to our attention that it looks like it will be extended to the end of 24. So when we look at how we've been spending the money and where we'll go for the future, if you turn the page over, you'll see the areas under priority 1. So we had the Achievement Academy, which is our summer program for K through 8 students, which was amazing this summer and really grew astronomically from the previous summer. So we did have quite a few students who were enrolled. They come to South 4 days a week. They start at 9 o'clock in the morning and they go to about 12:30 in the afternoon. We provide bus transportation. We have our certified staff that are working with them, and it's a wonderful combination of working towards academic goals, but also really having some enrichment fun. So we had some STEM activities and robotics and just kind of traditional camp games that they play as well. So it was a great turnout and we received positive feedback. So this was year 2. If the money continues for next year, we'll continue to offer that as a program for next year as well. We also have our credit recovery program at New Canaan High School. And for the past 2 summers, we've been able to provide scholarships for students who need to participate, who are unable to afford the credit recovery. So we've been able to give them full scholarships so that they can get those credits during the summer months. Last year, the building substitutes were covered under ESSER 2. And this year, we would like to continue with the building substitutes across the district. And so we'll be using some of the money in this grant to cover those building substitutes and help to make sure that our classes are covered with certified teachers who have a good understanding of our routines at our schools. We are happy to announce that we have filled our 2 special education vacancies. So one was hired last year and is continuing into year 2, and then another special education teacher was hired this summer. We also will continue to move forward with our additional math specialist and ELA specialist at SACS. So those are part-time people that we've made full. So they continue to support the district, and last school year they worked a full-time schedule, so they might have been a 0.6, and then they were increased that 0.4, which then put them at a 1.0, and the grant money's been helping. Those people really spend a lot of time working with our kids in intervention and supporting kids in gap areas that they might be having in math and reading. And those are the, right now, the areas that we're covering under priority 1. In priority 3, last summer, you may have recalled that we were having difficulty finding a family and community liaison or our outreach social worker. So we are thrilled to have that position filled, and somebody has already begun working this summer. And so we're very excited to have that person on board. You may recall last summer, we also put in a proposal to expand our Kids in Crisis Counselor program into SACS. So it's been a program that's been in existence at the high school for many years. We had a difficult time filling that position. We've had some success. So that position has been filled as well. And so we will be starting with a full-time Kids in Crisis Counselor at SACS in the fall as well. And we'll be happy to give you an update in the fall about what those roles and responsibilities are. And then we've also been really excited because last year we were unable to fill the school psychologist position, and we've had success there as well. So these are the areas that we have under ARP. We'll continue to look at how that money is spent and continue to focus in on those priority areas. And we're very fortunate that it will be extended. So some of these places will really be able to continue for one more year.
Great, thank you. Penny, question?
Thank you for the update. I just want to make sure that when the ARP money goes away, if these positions have been very successful and if there is a continuing need for them, even though it would be a budget increase, I hope that you'll bring it to the board so we can have a robust discussion about it and decide as a board whether or not that's something that we want to try and take and incorporate into our budget. If the need has gone away, and we don't need it, obviously, but just some of these programs seem like maybe we want them for the long term.
Thank you. I just have a quick question on the Kids in Crisis Counselor at SACS. Can you remind me, is the position at the high school is town funded? So are we funding this temporarily for now through the APSR grant and then?
Correct. So in conversation with the Health and Human Services Department, we'd agreed that we could bring it in using the APSR money, and when that dried up, that they've agreed that they would step in and put it into their budget.
Excellent.
And continue it from there. And that would be both positions, so the high school and the
That's
new
great.
SACS position.
It's a good partnership. Okay.
Yep, it is. And Penny, we are optimistic that these positions are going to have a markedly positive impact for our kids. The school psychologist piece, the community outreach, social worker, some of the things that, are some real needs that we have. And we are optimistic that we will see these coming before the board in the budget in the future when that grant money dries up.
Okay.
So in addition to the grant that Jill talked about, there were a series of other grants that were specifically designed for students with disabilities. As you know, students with disabilities were, in many cases, disproportionately impacted. So additional money was funneled into special education and for students with disabilities. And you have in front of you a list of the other grants that we were awarded and some of the ways that we use them around the same priorities in terms of mitigating learning loss, remediating any learning loss, increasing staff capacity, working with students with social, emotional, and mental health needs were all areas that were targeted using these additional funds. You look through the SO2 grant. The first one there says behavior consulting services. Certainly when we came back to school full-time last year, we knew we were going to see some behavior issues for students who had never really even been in a classroom setting. So we started to work with an outside consultant who would come in, work with a team in a school and provide some strategies and some professional development and some learning for staff, as well as working with both the clinical and the staff and classrooms, teachers who are boots on the ground. Some of these grants were very specific in what you could use them for, like the SO2 around the dyslexia. It had to be used solely for additional instruction for students with dyslexia. So students who were struggling, going outside, finding somebody outside the district who could work with students with dyslexia who needed to close that gap, who fell behind because of the change in the instruction model, or the learning loss that took place during the pandemic. So they were very specific. And skipping down to the bottom, the paraprofessional training. That was a grant, that last one, special education stipend. It was awarded 2 weeks ago, maybe, I have to spend it by the 30th of September. And for part of it was dedicated to paraprofessional training, and that's all it could be used for. So we arranged to do that on short notice. But again, it's around addressing those high priority areas that Dr. Carenti spoke about. You'll see another school psychologist in there. We had talked about the Literacy Academy and weaving that into the grant money that we have for this upcoming year. That was part of the budget proposal, that we would fund one through the budget, one through the grant, and then revisit it when the grant expires and incorporating that into the budget going forward. And you'll see under the ARP IDEA as well, the SACS Access Program, which is kind of putting that program together, doing some remodeling at SACS to be able to work on some of those skills earlier than waiting to the high school to work on some of the functional skills for students. So, we're in a good spot in terms of utilizing the grants, and as Dr. Lutzy said, this money will have a significant impact in what we've done with the money and hiring the appropriate staff to meet the needs of students that we see, before us. This will have a significant impact. We're confident that the way we've chosen to spend this money is going to really benefit students.
Thank you. So I think the answer is yes, but you said for every open position or position that's been supported through the grant, we've been able to hire against that position, or are there any that remain open?
There's possibly one special ed teacher I'm looking for.
Okay.
It may be filled, but
Okay, fingers crossed.
it's a challenging position right now to find. Yeah.
Well, and the teacher of the visually impaired.
Oh, yeah, that was in the budget, though. That was the budget
That's
position.
true.
The TVI, unfortunately, we were very close, but we were unable to secure somebody, and it was more about a quality of life. They didn't want to make the commute, is pretty much what it was. So we're addressing that. We're working with BESB to try and get the maximum amount of services we can through the state. Ashley Tremblay is going to be busy next year, but, we also want to look at, if there's an opportunity here to, find that special ed teacher who may have some experience with working with students with visual impairments. Can we somehow, work it so we can find somebody like that? But it's a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right, thanks for the update. It's helpful. Appreciate it. Okay, so now we'll move into our district goals. We board met in a workshop before this meeting briefly to discuss goal 4 in particular, and now we are going to step back and I think go through the whole document. And this is a second reading. Our first reading was in July, so we had a healthy discussion at that meeting, and we made some edits to the goals then. And tonight the goal is to work through the goals document and finish and approve them. So I think, get back to the document. We'll just work through them goal by goal. That makes sense. And if there's any additional comments or suggested changes, we'll just pause and have a conversation. Goal 1. I know there were some questions about standards-based grading. Right now, we have continued to review current practices in standards-based grading and share feedback from all stakeholders to determine future steps with standards-based grading in the district.
So I can just speak quickly. That objectives comes from the discussion the Board of Ed had after Melinda's presentation to the board discussing it, and I believe I heard, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I heard the board asking to learn more about standards-based grading, perhaps in a workshop type setting with some research and maybe even some case studies of some folks that are using it in a variety, in the area or, in the state or even somewhere else in the country, but to get some more context around that and its purpose and goals in order to better understand it before determining whatever that next step, whatever the path forward is, one way or the other.
Makes sense to me.
Dan?
So I know he's not here, but Bob had, I think, commented on wanting to change E to make a plan to remove standard-based gradings and implement a more traditional grading practice like other courses. So I do think that we, at the July meeting, had wanted to spend more time on it. What I would say is, if we want to keep the language as is, I think at least my take, based on what the most recent presentation and some of the things I've heard from people in the community, is that it's, that it's not a great construct. So I'm open to spending more time on it, whether it's in a workshop or going through it. But I think I think that the bar should be like, we want to see real support and justification and like kind of educational impact from it, as opposed to like the deferring that it was like, it will continue into perpetuity and we'll just talk about it.
Do you believe this language gets us there? Because I tried to keep it open to determine future steps.
I think so. I just would want to make sure it's more focused on reviewing the existing than it is like something that might be more expansionary to other topics or subjects or courses.
I would add, I think it's important to understand the why around what you said. Like, it's not a good construct, like why, and I think that goes back to, and we talked a little bit at our last meeting about just communicating with teachers and also with parents, because I think, with COVID, there was a couple years of, there wasn't that time spent in open houses and where the teachers had an opportunity to explain it. And I think it's a good time to step back and almost, revisit the why and then seek feedback as part of this review current practices. I would be in favor of that, because I do think I don't think we should take it away. I think it has potential, and I think we just, as you said, continue our work around it and understanding. Yeah, Brendan?
Yeah, one of the reasons why I support this is I think there are places where there's more done with standards-based grading, and there are elements of it that are incredibly helpful for telling a student or a family what it is they actually need to improve on versus just getting an 80 or a 90 or whatever. So I think my 2 cents on it is, historically, since it's been in, our schools, really at Saks, in science, it's more been difficult for parents to understand what does it all mean, and what is this grade versus, really anything else. I think it can be really helpful if you actually understand it and dig into it. It's just tough when, people aren't familiar with it. So I'd be supportive of, keeping this language, really exploring, like, what have people done, more or less, and what, at various levels, and figuring out, what's best for us. Because there's an element of, sorry to dig too much into this, but there's an element of, if you do this for one course, but not 5 courses for a particular student or a particular year, it's apples and oranges. So I think we sort of have to say, are we doing this? Is it something that's going to be meaningful and across a bunch of grades, a bunch of courses, or are we not, and keeping things consistent? Or is there a real great reason to do it in science and not in other areas, right? Maybe we keep it that way.
Okay, so if everyone's comfortable, we'll move on? Yes? Okay, I think there was a question also that came in, I know Bob's not here, just to explain a little bit more on 1C, what we mean by next generation assessment. So is that the science 1C?
Sure.
You can
So
just
when we
elaborate.
talk about next generation assessments, it's also about the use of technology to complete those assessments. So it's preparing students to be able to take all assessments in a variety of ways. So it's not always about that paper pencil assessment. It's also about how do you utilize technology to take your assessment. It's also about performance-based assessments. So it's just preparing students for the ranges of kinds of assessments that they will be faced throughout their schooling here at New Canaan, and obviously as they move into college.
Right. It's sort of the best way to make sure that the assessment assesses what they know and are able to do in the discipline, not how well they know how to take the assessment.
I mean, should we add some language around that then, or like the range of assessments? Because I think that actually, helps explain it a little bit better, so that people, as there's a little bit more meat on the bone.
You just say something like including technology enabled or something like that. The next generation, including technology enabled assessments. I don't know. Does that help?
That's good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. Anything else on 1? Okay, so moving on, 2, I think there was a question around some specificity on 2C and just what is meant by the scheduling options at SACS.
Oh, sure. Well, that's, with the change on start times, the 75-minute difference between the first, the upper division and the lower division, and the use of shared staff and others, SACS is continuing to review the master scheduling model. So this isn't about times, start or end times, it's about what we do in between. So they're looking to see, are there different and better ways to schedule that time in between to maximize opportunities for kids and to share resources across the upper and lower. So it's really about the scheduling model that kids are following when they're in the building. And we have more work to do on that.
Yeah.
To that end, though, is that best here, or is that better fleshing it out in the start time?
I think it's bigger than start time, only because it's real. We're always sort of thinking about the master schedule. Like what we do with the time that we have kids is it's a very big decision, right? I mean, that's a critical decision. So this has propelled us into the conversation, but we might be having it anyway. And I think that it's really a teaching and learning goal around, maximizing the use of that time to meet the students' educational goals throughout, so.
Right. I think it's also exploring that workshop block of time. It's exploring possibility of electives at a 7th and 8th grade level. So it's really that expansion of that schedule. So SACS will operate this year with their traditional 45-minute period schedule. We've had to be really creative with that 75-minute gap. Is there a better way for us to be utilizing staff? Is there a better, more efficient way for us to be utilizing it? So I think it's a bigger study that we're looking at and exploring and making sure that we're optimizing all the time that we have with our students while they're at SACS.
I mean, then it feels bigger than just the anticipated impacts on student learning, health, and wellness then, though, too, right? Like we're talking about the master schedule, teacher efficiencies, things like that.
I think everything will come out of making sure that we don't impact that student learning. So, ultimately, student learning is the number one priority, as well as the health and the wellness of our students. And that's going to be what drives our schedule. If the efficiencies of the staff come out of that, then that's great. But if they don't come out of that, then we're going to continue to employ the number of staff that we need at SACS in order to keep that moving forward. Does that?
Other comments on 2? 3? I don't see any on 3. 4, we reviewed the change to 4E and talking about the planetarium.
Yep, we wanted to put in a curricular goal for the renovation of the planetarium and make sure we explicitly said it'd be K-12.
5 or 6, discuss.
6D is the addition of the computer science crosswalk with the newly published standards.
Yep. Oh, Julie, go ahead.
I'm not sure where this should go, which is why I kind of waited to the end of goal 1. But I think we need to add in somewhere, have a discussion about a curriculum committee. I know there's been some talk about that in the past. And I think if we add that as a goal or in the objectives somewhere, I think as a board, we need to put it down that we're going to have a discussion about that.
Okay. Brendan?
Yeah, I think that's not really a goal for our district. It's a board-related discussion. So if we as a board determine that we want to have a curriculum committee, we can do that. If we want to do something different than what's been done in the past. But it's not it's not a goal for 2022, 23 for our district that guides the administration.
Yeah, I think, well, in the fall, each fall when we, revisit committees and charters and we look at, that's an annual process, so that would be the time that we could have that discussion. And I think, we talked about a process where we would be receiving more regular updates, like kind of summarized updates in addition to the presentations we have, like we did was that June with you, Dr. Grunty? So I think, it's important to keep that moving forward, and then we can have a conversation about that process and whether there's more that we want to do. So,
To that point, though, I guess, would it make sense to do something along the lines of, like basically working with the administration and like the CLC to explore the creation and how it would actually may work? Like, we may decide not to do it, we may decide to do it, but I think it's something that I don't think it's going to be just a board discussion. I think it's going to be iterative with the administration. And so it might be something that if we have it as a goal to explore the creation of it or to consider the implementation of it or how we best work together, it could be something that at least we can highlight that as a priority as opposed to something that we're saying we're not saying we're going to do it. We're going to say we want to make sure that we in the administration are saying this is something that we want to spend time on in the calendar year to figure out.
I think the way you described the process is fine, but it's really a board operations piece. It's not a goal of the district that impacts our, these are the district goals. So I think that's a board operations discussion that we can have, again, around committees and how we operate as a board going forward post, once we hit the fall, just like we did last year. I mean,
I'd just say that's exactly what we've done in the past. We've never made board committees a part of our goals for the district. I mean, it's an important goal, right? This is just not the document it goes into. And some years the board has had set new goals and some years it hasn't. So, if this board wants to consider that, it just does it separately.
Anything else on 1? Now we'll move on to 2. Okay.
Okay, just 2.6, yep. We, in discussion with Janet Reed, our Director of Nursing, and Jen Adelson, the Health Director, we're going to be taking down the microsite, that Charting Our Course microsite, and incorporating some resources into our general website. We're no longer going to be publishing the dashboard because, well, for lots of reasons, but in consultation with Dr. Harrison, with Dr. Pierce, Janet and Jen felt that we're transitioning out of the phase where we needed all of that on a day-to-day basis into a different phase. And so we'll still have resources for people, be able to answer questions and direct them to the right places if they come looking, but it will not be separate and apart from as an entirely separate site. It'll be a reference.
Okay. All right, moving on to goal 3. And goal 4, so, go ahead, 3, yep.
I should have asked this in the July meeting, but so for like a reference in here in 1A for practices described in like the effective teaching and effective leading frameworks. Is there a way to, and this might not work, but like is there a way to use this broader document for when we have some of these references to actually like create links so that people that want to dig deeper, understand what we mean by these things could actually access that information?
Yeah, we could go back and do that. That wouldn't be too hard to do. I think the TEPL document and the LEPL document, as we call it, one's teacher, one's leader, those are available. The frameworks are available online. We have to work our way through a bit, but I believe we could do that.
Yeah, so both of the frameworks should be online. As we're revising the website, we'll have to look to make sure that they're the most updated frameworks that are online. So it's usually our whole entire district process. And I'm happy to come in front of the board. I know we were supposed to do that last year. We just ran out of time to kind of walk everybody through what that framework is and what the domains are and what all the indicators are that are within each of those domains. So it becomes quite cumbersome when you go to look at it without the deeper understanding of what goes behind it and how teachers are supervised and evaluate, as well as our leaders and how our leaders are all evaluated as well. But happy to come and do a presentation on that so that people have a deeper understanding of how we go about supervising and evaluating our staff. Because it is one of the most important things we do.
Okay, so moving into goal 4, pick up where we left off. So we did add in that first statement, responsible local, national, and global. And I think we're good on objective 1 and 2, and we were discussing 3. And I think where we left off was that we're mostly comfortable with the language in goal 3, just the actual statement. The initial statement, and we can talk about that some more, but I was hearing that most people seemed comfortable, and then we're beginning to talk about that. Is that, I'll open it up for discussion, comments. The one thing that had been put out on the table, which we did not finish discussing, was whether we could insert another statement, like a new A potentially, that would address the student experience and sort of our goal as a board for that experience within New Canaan Public Schools. Brendan?
Yeah, I wrote something that was a little bit, part of the conversation that we were having earlier, which I'll just, excuse me, I will read, which is shortened it up, and so hopefully easier for people to digest, but I'm open to modifications, obviously. So NCPS will strive to deepen students' understanding of a range of differences among people. NCPS will work to foster empathy and respect for all and to celebrate the unique and varied contributions each of us makes to this community. And this piece, this is something that we had in our goals, I think in 21 or 21, 22, or maybe it was 2021. But I think this is important, which is, in this regard, NCPS will seek expert advice to advance these initiatives. And the reason I included that is I think it's important that we, take action. It's not just stating what we believe or what we think is important. It's talking about what we'll do to address a deficiency that I think we all know. We've heard tonight, we've heard in the past, we've heard over a number of years, we believe we have, but do it in a way that, we as a board have control over, we have input on, we're able to hear, from experts who actually do this. None of us do. And then, make a determination as to what's best to do or not do in the New Canaan Public Schools. So I'm happy to read it again.
Okay. Yes. Could you please? I think that would be helpful.
NCPS will strive to deepen students' understanding of a range of differences among people. NCPS will work to foster empathy and respect for all and to celebrate the unique and varied contributions each of us makes to this community. In this regard, NCPS will seek expert advice to advance these initiatives.
Okay. Thanks, Brendan. Comments? This would be, I guess, a new 3A.
Yeah, it could go anywhere in 3.
Yeah. I guess the one question when I talked about the expert advice, whether, I relate that back to, it'll be interesting to tie it back to the results of the climate survey as well. I understand there might be differences, but I think
that's one of the inputs, yeah.
As part of the action plan,
Yeah.
potentially, that could be a step.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good. I think it's good. I think we should add something like that. I think based upon, what we heard tonight, I think it wouldn't be bad to include a few things of the types of diversities that we're talking about. I can't remember if you put in thoughts and beliefs, which Erica mentioned. And I think it's important to, mention race and ethnicity and sex, or gender, whatever. I know we don't have to hold the whole laundry list, but I thought it'd be good.
That's the concern I have, is that the list it's a long list,
You
right?
could- you
All
could just
differences
name a
among
few.
people.
You could-
No, I know, I get it, but you risk leaving something out and it not being viewed as important or whatever. So that's why I didn't include it, but I hear you.
Other feedback? Either on that, or we can.
Is the expert piece already addressed in B, or is that different? Continue partnering with community agencies and experts to develop and/or offer parent education issues impacting our students, families, and schools? Or is that more directed towards parents?
I think so.
Yeah, that was meant as a community outreach and, again, in partnership, so with some of the, like NC Cares, the Community Foundation, some others.
Dan?
I think, we've talked at the July meeting and at the workshop a little bit about it, but I think, I would definitely not be an advocate of, trying to go find some, DEI expert to come here and try and kind of explain whatever the most kind of current thing is. Like, I think if we want to spend the time, like, defining some of these terms and understanding how we want them implemented in the school, I think that's okay. But I don't know that, spending money on, a consultant, an expert consultant necessarily is a good use of resources. And I don't know that it would generate the level of nuance at the local level that we're targeting.
I'm wondering if a facilitator might be a better choice then, like somebody who's not coming in telling us externally what's going on, but that is, helpful in shepherding our process, because we do want it to be New Canaan and be local, and that maybe just having somebody help us with that.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't think first of all, I don't really know, what type of person exactly is out there or exists that could help us. But what I'm thinking of is someone who could come in and talk about, what are the range of ways out there that, K through 12 or 7 through 12 or whatever, that students are learning about, differences among people and ways to respect each other, all the things that we've been talking about, what works and what doesn't. Hopefully there have been some studies done over a number of years. And then we make the decision as to what's done in New Canaan, not to come tell us, what to do, but to give us some, research as to what's been done and what works and what doesn't. That's the way, at least as long as I've been on the board for the last 7 years, we introduce new things. We go out, the administration goes out, other people within the public schools go out and find out, what's been done elsewhere, what works and what doesn't. And then at the end of the day, we the Board of Ed, decide what's done. So that's what I'm thinking of. I don't know whether it's a facilitator or a consultant, but, someone who's, expert, which, we're not.
Yeah. I think I find the challenge with that is just we don't know what problem we're trying to solve or what the goal is. And I think it's, as long as we have a goal, and I'm going to take it back to the 4.1D where we say share results of the school climate surveys along with subsequent action plans. And I think, in part, we should understand, are we doing everything we can to make, going back to the language in 3, students feel safe, connected, engaged, included, respectful, and supportive. And, if there's gaps, then maybe that's when we need to enlist support or help from an outside expert, depending on, where that deficiency or that opportunity lies. Penny?
I just think this one stands on its own a little bit. I mean, a lot of our goals are intertwined, and I think you've recognized one of the areas where there is interlacing here. But, we know we have issues in this community on this, and that we want to address them. And I think actually it could be hard to find the right type of expertise, but I think we do need someone who understands what's worked in other districts, or we need to find like another great public school district that's done this well and then go create a committee and go visit them, right? We need to do in this area what we've done in other areas. When we were looking at, BYO, bring your own computer, we went and talked to districts and found out where it worked and where it hadn't worked. So I think we need to, I don't think sitting at this table with the 9 of us, even with all the help that we have, without kind of doing a little bit more research, we're not really ready to sort of dig in and say, this is what we need to do, and this is what we're all comfortable with, right? Because we're all coming from different places. We all have different conceptions about what this would mean. So I think if we get the right person and we start doing some research, I think we'll find common ground on this. Everybody wants our students to feel included, and everybody recognizes that New Canaan is not the most diverse of communities, and that, there's a movement that we should do more about that helps our students. Every one of our students, doesn't make anyone feel bad.
Dan?
To that point, that almost leads to, it seems premature to start to have this have some of these components necessarily as a goal at the curriculum teacher classroom level. It seems like we might want to spend time on some of the verbiage of what we're thinking about here, but then spend time to actually do that work, do that research before you would want to necessarily agree on these as tangible goals that we want, at the classroom level at this point.
Yeah, so I just want to read what I wrote again, because I don't think I'm, suggesting here that we do anything yet at the classroom level. All I'm saying is what our sort of mission is, which is NCPS will strive to deepen students' understanding of a range of differences among people, will work to foster empathy and respect for all, and to celebrate the unique and varied contributions each of us makes to this community. And then just in this regard, we're going to seek some expert advice as to how we might advance those initiatives. Not we are advancing those initiatives, it's just this is what we believe. If we advance those initiatives, how are we going to do it?
Can you do it one more time? I'm trying
Sure.
to.
You want me to email it to you guys? I can
Sure.
do that. Hold on a sec. I'll do that right now. And I'll read it too. Now I have to find my sent items. Let's see. Okay, sorry. NCPS will strive to deepen students' understanding of a range of differences among people. NCPS will work to foster empathy and respect for all, and to celebrate the unique and varied contributions each of us makes to this community. In this regard, NCPS will seek expert advice to advance these initiatives.
So does that kind of replace the A then? So continue providing professional development for faculty and staff focused on raising cultural awareness and enhancing culturally proficient and responsive educational approaches.
I think this one's a little bit different, but because I think that's more about how the faculty and staff respond to the community, meaning, they understand that they teach in New Canaan and what New Canaan's all about, et cetera. Versus this is, what do we as a board believe is important, and what do we need to do to advance what we believe is important?
So it's an additional, it's either a new A.
Yeah, or it could be.
And we have A through F or
Doesn't
F,
matter.
whatever,
Yeah.
Where you have among people, I'm wondering if you should say among our community or something like that?
Yeah, members. We could say members of our community, members of the MCPS community, whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
It's actually really more than just members of our community, right? It's to make people understand.
Beyond, yeah.
Yeah, beyond our community, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you're thinking of unique and varied contributions each of us makes, period.
Yes, exactly. I guess we could remove to this community. Yeah.
So
Offers, yeah.
I really like the statement. I think it's really well written. I think it encapsulates all of what we're trying to do with this goal. I think the rub is, at least with me, and maybe with other people in this up here, is just the last part. You know, seeking expert advice to advance these initiatives. Sorry, Benny.
No, no,
Let me just finish this thought. I think that, you know, the concern with that step is that once we seek the expert advice, what are the probabilities that we decide to accept whatever this person says? You know? It's once we get started down this path, I think it's going to be hard to sort of ever stop it, and I'm reluctant to outsource such a huge decision for such a giant, you know, number of kids in this school district to one expert who has maybe never even set foot in this community. So that's where I am. I love the statement, and I'm a little bit more cautious about the next step.
Well, I wonder, go ahead, Julie, then I'll make a comment.
I agree with Phil. I think the first two sentences are perfect. Foster empathy, respect for all, celebrate unique and varied contributions. 100%, I think that should be in there, but I think the last sentence does give me pause. I think deciding on an expert, how do you hire one? I think there's a lot that goes into it, and there are a lot of variables. I think the first two sentences, I think, are perfectly said.
I think, you know, going back to what Erica mentioned, because it was something that we had discussed when we didn't get to it, was to bring in a facilitator just to help the board have a conversation with the district. I mean, ultimately, it's important to have input and understand, you know, what is happening and where are the needs and, you know, what do our students need more of. And through that conversation, you know, we could craft more action items. I mean, I think that's where we were headed last year and the year before. We just didn't get to it.
I guess I would rather have that discussion post the kind of school climate survey discussion, and like when we're talking about, you know, more action items, and we can always decide that, hey, this is what we want to spend time on. I just don't know that it's a goal today.
Okay. Brendan.
Yeah, I'm again, I think it's important for us to learn, and, you know, we know that this is an issue in the New Canaan Public Schools, and we know that we need to come up with a solution. We don't know how to get from where we are today to a potential solution. And to me, it's important that we seek out that advice. The expert is not making the decision for us. The expert's giving their advice. They're giving their, hopefully, experience and research and all of that. The New Canaan Board of Education is making the decision. It's not Dr. Lutzy. It's not anyone else. It's the 9 of us. So there's really nothing to be afraid of. It's just simply us learning more about what we might want to do. If everyone believes in the words that I just sent around, all we're asking for is someone to come in and talk about how have these things actually been advanced in other public schools throughout the country, maybe elsewhere too. And then we can make a call. What do we do? It could be we do nothing, or it could be we do a whole lot.
If I may add on to what you said, I think opening ourselves up to the possibility of multiple sources of information and expertise is a good opportunity, because, you know, one person may have one view, but I think if we, you know, in this regard, NCPS will seek research and define steps in a process to advance these initiatives. Does that get us there? It opens us up to multiple sources of information.
Yeah. Can you say that again?
Well, it's a little. In this regard, NCPS will seek research, expert advice, you can take that in or out, and define steps and a process to advance these initiatives. And expert advice just meaning it could be of more than one expert, you know, just, or we could just say research. And define in that steps and defining the process, you know, we may choose to bring in a facilitator, an expert, or all of the above, or none of the above. Penny?
I think something along that is good. I had drafted something slightly different and maybe closer to what we had a couple of years ago. But I think we want to, if we're going to get an expert, right, we want to sort of define what this expert's going to do. And I think this board wants this expert to work with it, not to. So anyhow, I added, in this regard, NCPS will seek expert advice to work with the board and administration to draft a statement of beliefs in this area and decide on our next steps. It's just slightly different. I think if you look at what a lot of schools have done, I have spent time in other years looking at it, usually they all start with a general statement of some kind.
Penny, can you repeat that one more time?
So I have, in the last sentence would be, in this regard, NCPS will seek expert advice to work with the board and administration to draft a statement of beliefs in this area and decide on our next steps.
I think that's good.
Dan?
So I just don't have the confidence that that going out and seeking kind of expert advice like this, that we're going to be able to find somebody who I think has the type of balanced discussion that I think we want to be having and is not really already kind of, far down the road on, what is away from what we're doing here, what is a, cottage industry at the higher education level. I think we're trying to tackle it ground up, and I think that that's constructive, but I think, let's just say I'm not as big of a believer in experts as others, so.
So, I mean, again, we're going to ask this person or group of people or whatever, it could be a panel, what they think. We don't have to agree with what they tell us. We'll have other views, and we ultimately make the decision. All we're saying is, just like we do with everything else that we do, just about, we get expert opinions, we talk to the administration, and we make a call as to what's best for New Canaan. I think that's the right process.
Okay, so I'm hearing there's just disagreement around the expert. I think we're really close, so I think if we can find language that we agree on that maybe doesn't include singular expert, I think we'll be okay. Because, I think that through the process, if we find an expert, a consultant, a facilitator, whatever that person may be, and we feel that they're a good fit for the district, then we should absolutely bring them in. I think that's a process that we have to go through.
Penny said expert advice, which doesn't mean
I think expert advice is sort of a little bit vague.
Broad.
It allows us the flexibility to do whatever we want. It doesn't say, oh, you have to find one person. And we could go out and get scholarly articles and all read up on it if we wanted to. Yep. Go away for the weekend. But, I think that I'm listening and I hear we don't want one person who might have whatever reputation, come in and say, this is the way. But I think we want expertise of some kind. So I think expert advice would allow us to find it somewhere.
Can you read your statement again?
Just the last
The
sentence?
the one sentence.
So in this regard, NCPS will seek expert advice to work with the board and administration to draft a statement of beliefs in this area and decide on our next steps.
I mean, isn't this the statement of beliefs, though, that we're trying to?
No, this would just be a start. I mean, hopefully these words would be in it, but, I don't know, because I've never done that.
Can't we just use research? And I think what Katrina read earlier made some sense to me. My experience with these experts in various organizations has not been positive, so I can appreciate Dan's hesitation, but I don't disagree that it seems that people in our community feel like there's an issue that needs to be addressed. I struggle with that term as well.
How about we'll seek to facilitated workshop or conversation, whichever, and then the rest of what you said. Go ahead.
Yeah, again, like, we're trying to do something that is meaningful, significant, addresses a serious issue, and we're saying, well, we don't want to hear from, people about their expert views. Again, we can choose 5, we can choose 30, we can do it for the next 18, 24, 36 months. But to make a decision today, we don't want to hear from experts, regardless of who they may be. And there may be some people who consider themselves experts who we want to hear from who say, none of this stuff works, so don't do any of it. Maybe that's the case. Maybe there's someone out there like that. I'm sure that there is. Any of those people can come here. We can hear from them, and we can make a decision as to what we want to do. Why today we would make a decision to not get expert advice, I don't understand why we'd ever make that call.
I think in a way,
Expert advice, like in what though? Like what specifically? What is the expertise?
Helping kids to deepen their understanding of differences among people, to foster empathy and respect for all, and to celebrate the unique and varied contributions each of us makes to the community.
Don't we do that currently under
not well enough?
I'm going to try again, because I think we're really close. How about, in this regard, NCPS will seek independent expertise, research, and develop steps to advance these initiatives.
Say that again.
In this regard, NCPS will seek independent expertise, research, and develop steps to advance this initiative. Slightly more broad.
I think
it's calling on expertise in whatever way we think we need it. It could be people, it could be studies, it could be referring to other, talking to other schools, school districts, superintendents.
I'm okay with that.
I'm fine with that language.
Sorry, I'm open to other possibilities.
I would rather agree to the first 2 sentences and then, pump it out to teachers, have them remind kids of this, and we're good to go. I mean, it's
just not.
It's a simple statement that I think we can all agree to, and that's, I think, what we're actually trying to instill in our kids. I don't know what beyond that.
I think there's a sense of measurement and making sure that this is what we're, it's one thing to say, it's another thing to do it. And I think in many ways we are doing this. This is what we strive to do. This is not a new idea or concept in our schools. This is important. It's at the core of who we are and what we do. I think it's just making sure that we're doing everything we can to push it forward and, to make students, I go back to number 3. It's there. It's in writing. It's what our students said they wanted to feel in our classrooms. And that's the proof.
I think the language, at the lead-in of 3 language, I think we're close on, and I think we're close to agreeing on the statement side. I think where there might be a level of disagreement is on how much further and all the myriad ways that you want to try and expand it further. And it's not clear to me where we're headed.
This work ties directly back to the statement that Brendan has proposed, and nothing more. So I guess that's Julie.
I think changing expert to expertise doesn't do a whole lot, in my opinion. I think it's more or less the same thing.
Okay. Do you have another suggestion?
I like the first 2 sentences as they are.
I do too.
Penny?
I just want to say that the way this initiative was always envisioned by the board, this board's the new board, this board could decide they want to do something different, but it was always envisioned that we would learn about this. We saw that there was a hole in our education. We don't know how big it is, but it's there. It's persistent. It's a little bit more than just giving teachers a statement, because we've always told teachers to nurture students, but yet we hear that we're not doing as good a job as we should to prepare our graduates to enter the world. So we wanted to learn more about it and over future years take more steps as we became comfortable about them. So I don't think it's just a statement and then move on. It's always been seen as a process. Like I mean, if you look at how we develop any changes, we don't move quickly, except with respect to COVID, in this district. We figure it out. We talk to our teachers. We talk to the administration. We try and figure out what will work for us, for New Canaan, not what worked in Darien, not what works, elsewhere. And then we try it out. We don't roll it out all at once. We try it with certain students. We involve parents. I mean, we're not talking about making any drastic changes. These are just, sort of like small steps along the process, where, rather than just deal with the collective experience of, that's in our heads, we wanted to get a little bit more knowledge from people who've looked at this in other ways. And I definitely do not want to hire any of the experts that came to your organizations and gave training. They're off my list, regardless. But, I think there's got to be, I mean, I know my sister I had a huge discussion with her because she had one expert she liked, and then another, that she just like went on and on and on about how horrible this expert was. And I was like, so I get it. I actually know that there are people out there who can come in and they can be so heavy-handed that they will alienate us and put us at a, further back than we are today. And we don't want to go there, but we do want to learn. I think this board has always wanted to learn.
Thank you. I'm going to suggest one other crack. I'm going to take one more crack at this. NCPS, in this regard, NCPS will define and research next steps to support this initiative.
Can you repeat that one more time?
In this regard, NCPS will define and research next steps to support this initiative. I think it allows us to take a pause, take a step back from this conversation, and define how, what are the right steps to achieve this goal. We're committing to the goal, we're committing to the statement.
The problem is that's what we're doing today. We're defining the next step, which is we have to do something.
And this says we will define and research.
Right, but we are defining today. Like we have to decide, are we taking a step to get expert advice, to do research, or are we just saying next year we're going to actually decide what we're going to do next? Which I think, I realize you're trying to find common ground, but that's the problem with that language, is it says we're going to decide next year what to do the following year.
I don't think so. I think that the only difference is, in fact, the only difference is that your language would basically have in the goals that we're going to hire an expert, but that's not what Katrina is necessarily driving towards. It doesn't mean we don't end up doing that, but I think that's a nice bridge, personally.
I think actually Penny's language, which was modified by Katrina, which said expertise and research or whatever it was, to me is a good middle ground, because again, we're just committing to learning more, and then we can make a call as to what to do.
Maybe learning more is actually talking to Darien and Westport and other towns that maybe have implemented some of these initiatives, or that we might.
I think it's what Penny said. I mean, it's learning, and I think that learning step it could include a lot of things. It could include speaking to experts. It could include bringing in a consultant. It could include just talking to other districts. It's all of the above, based on how we want to move forward with achieving these goals. So.
Yeah, just one thing to note on that. Hugo just brought this up, but Darien went down this path last year, and we should definitely talk to them. This is recent for them, and I think their input would be.
Yeah, but I think we have to step back and decide, what. Yes, agreed. But so have a lot of other districts. So I think there's a lot out there to learn from. So that's okay. Are we there?
Where were we again?
What was the previous language that you read?
Okay, so maybe it's a bridge between these two. We'll get back in. In this regard, NCPS will seek independent expertise, research, and develop steps to advance these initiatives. The last statement I read was NCPS will define and research next steps to support this initiative,
Research and define, or define and research?
Research and define. Yeah, research has to come first. NCPS will research and define next steps to support this initiative. So we're committing to a next step. We are, and that is, where do we want to get the information that we need? I think it's a compromise.
But first, we want to get it from, I think we want to get the climate report, right?
That's part of it.
And then I think to the extent, like, I would probably rather hear from, like, current teachers here, like, where they think we're doing well, where they think we have holes. Like, that would be much more relevant to me than, like, theory from an expert.
I think this allows us the space to do all of that. If, yes? Are we there?
I'm there.
Okay? Yes? Good? Brendan?
You just read it again.
NCPS will, in that regard, NCPS will research and define next steps to support this initiative.
I'm fine with that.
Let me just.
I have to say, I think the phase research needs to be, it's basically saying we're going to decide what we're going to do later. It's just punting it. It's just punting the football down the field. It's not.
But I think it gives us the space to decide if we can find an expertise, the expertise to bring in-house, then we should. We absolutely should.
I would at least add in, hiring an expert, if appropriate,
I think the board commits us to something we don't.
Find expert, we've done this. We've always gone out and I just do not understand what the problem is. In every single other area that this board has worked on, we have always said that we are members of the communities. We are not experts. We need to go out there. We need to talk to the best people statewide, nationwide, internationally, and find out how to tackle this problem. So why aren't we willing to do that here? It looks like we're not willing to do anything if we're not willing to go out and talk to experts. I don't get why we can't get information. If we get information and we don't like it, we just say, well, we don't agree with you. Or all you did was alienate us. So the last thing we're going to let you do is alienate this whole district.
I guess my hesitation, I understand your point, and I hear you. My hesitation on the expert is that we're fixating on this person, that I think we have to step back and say, we're a school district. Do we want to learn from corporate initiatives? Do we want to learn from other educational districts? We have to define what it is. So
I would say expert.
Okay, you want to.
Not an expert. I would go with the word expertise.
I agree. Yeah, and I think it's important to not just say we're taking another step and we'll decide later. And
I'm not there on that language.
Expertise as a general term.
What about outside input?
External
input?
I think expertise is general. I really do. I think it's just like we're willing to listen to what experts across many, it could be an expert in special education. It could be an expert in, it could be an expert in a lot of things. And we have to define what it is we're looking for expertise, and that's part of this process. So I think we're really getting hung up on one word.
I guess, back to my other question, I'm like, isn't a lot of this already in SEL, where we've done a lot of this work and we've talked to people in district and out of district, and like a lot of that is already encompassed.
But we're saying the goal says we're continuously strengthening our school and classroom communities. So if we're going to commit to that, then we need to figure out what we need to do to be better. Are we good?
I would do it without I would do your first version.
Okay.
Agreed.
Any other comments? Erica, Julie, others? I think we need to move on.
Sorry, read the first version again.
NCPS will seek independent expertise, research, and develop next steps to advance these initiatives. And then the other version is that NCPS will research and define next steps to support this initiative or advance. I think we're caught up in a word, so I would like to know where everybody sits, and let's move on.
I'm comfortable with expertise.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with the version without it.
Okay, hold on. I'm going this way.
I'm comfortable with the first two sentences.
Okay, my question was.
I'm not comfortable with hiring an expert.
I didn't say we were hiring. The statement does not say hiring an expert. Seek expertise.
I think the problem is working with 3 versions now.
No, 2. One says seek independent expertise. The other one says research and define.
But then you're adding, like I'm saying, I think the second version.
Seek independent expertise in research and develop next steps to advance this initiative. The other one is just research and define next steps. We're hung up on independent expertise.
No, but I think we've said, I think there's support, at least at some level, for research and define, but not adding in expertise into that.
Those are the 2 versions. So I'm just getting a poll of where everybody is. So
Without, I think the first version.
With or without expertise?
Without expertise, to begin with.
got it. Brendan, I know where you are. Dan, I know where you are. Hugo.
Yeah, I maybe it's because of lack of experience on the board. Maybe I just haven't heard enough to feel like I'm ready to take that next step. So I'd go without it.
I always want to get the expertise to help inform our decision. I truly do not understand this.
I'm comfortable with seeking outside expertise and research, but I think at this point, let's move on without it. And if we can come back and someone has a better version of that can get everybody comfortable, then let's move on. So we do have the rest of the goals to get through. So moving on to any other comments on 3?
So I guess on 3A, the professional development side. So this is professional development for faculty and staff focused on raising cultural awareness and enhancing culturally proficient and responsive educational approaches, right? I guess I'm just trying to understand what falls under that rubric.
So when we think about culturally proficient and responsive educational approaches, it's really about the teachers learning to plan in recognition of the variety of backgrounds that students bring into the classroom. And it's making it intentional in there when we talk about sort of pedagogy or educational approach. That's really, it's about the planning and the execution of those lesson plans in a way that honors and values all of the students that are in the room as they come in. And it can be small things, or it can be larger things specifically. But Dr. Crenti and I were talking about it just the other day, and it could be something. And actually, our new EL and world language supervisor was talking with our new teachers about this a little bit. On the first day of class, taking attendance, instead of reading out the students' names, ask the students to tell you their names and then take careful note of how they pronounce their names and how they say them so that you can get it correct in going forward. That's important. It's important to kids, important to families, important to cultures. So there's small things and big things that teachers can learn to do that help every student feel honored, valued, and included in the classroom. And that's really, but a lot of people wouldn't naturally do that, right? What does a teacher normally do on the first day of school? Go down the list, say, Brian Louisi. Say, no, it's not it. And then about 3 weeks later, they get it right. So it's just, it's important. So that's what that means around sort of how do we do big or small things that help students feel part of that classroom community early on. Does that help?
Other comments, questions? Okay. Number 4, there was
the addition, there was the MOU.
The MOU was added, and
I think we just have to get rid of NC in front of BOE.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. It's because it's the NCPD.
Yeah.
Should we spell out what an MOU is, just to say?
Memorandum of Understanding, sure.
Just put that out in the goals.
Yeah. And it's to continue discussions because ultimately that MOU would come before the board for discussion and approval. So we can't necessarily say execute upon because the board will have to review and decide one way.
It's important to take a step back because it's, there's a lot of new board members, and it's been a long time since we discussed it, so.
Right, we met in Leah's office in
Yeah.
2019, right?
Yeah, it was actually the meeting, it would have been the next meeting when COVID,
Yeah.
when we closed our schools, so,
But we'll get rid of NC.
yeah.
I have a comment on D. I just, there's a lot of, there's a lot of folks in the community that are anxious to find out what our kind of next step is around security in the schools, and a lot of folks are surprised and dismayed that, we're getting through the summer, we're starting a school year without actually having a decision on whether or not we're going to have any additional security at the elementary school. So, like, I was wondering if we could put some type of timeline on D.
Sure.
And
Couple
perhaps
things on
also
that.
look to like an outside of just the Crisis Advisory Board, but maybe like another like a third party as well.
So, yeah, we are in the process. We've actually scheduled 2 security audits this year, one in the fall, one in the winter. The idea being get a first one through, get the recommendations there, whatever they may be, and then to have another separate, different group come through the second time and see what their recommendations are, align those, as we continue to move forward. So those plans are in place. We had a CAB meeting today, a couple of hours, and we had, Deputy Captain DeFederico, our SROs were there, campus monitors, Russ was there, others. And actually, John DeFederico was sharing that they are very close to the position that would move between the 3 elementary schools that's been discussed, and they were talking about using grant funding for that. But actually, the feedback from the town was to not use grant money, but to budget for it so that it doesn't, that's long-term, so it's a long-term solution. So that is right around the corner. The CAB conversation, and again, Deputy Captain DeFederico, others said they'd be joining the members of CAB as they come before the board. That's being prepared now and will be ready in the next meeting or two. And they'll be able to talk a bit more about different things. But as you know, the specifics of our security, we discussed in executive session, just because of the sensitive nature of it all. But lots has been happening throughout the summer, and we'll update together as we go through to that. And certainly the results of the security audits would be brought to CAB, to the full board in executive session, things like that. So a lot has happened through the summer. That's the challenging nature of school security, because it's not something that you talk about, for obvious reasons. Right.
Julie.
So is CAB doing the fall audit or the winter audit or both?
I'm sorry, CAB? No, CAB's not doing the audit. These are external groups coming in, doing the audit, and then reporting their findings to CAB and to the board.
Which external, do you know the name?
There's 2 different ones. I don't have them in front of me now, but I have them again for you.
Okay, yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great, thanks.
And what was the timing on that?
Can't be specific as to the timing, or it makes the audit less valuable.
Got it.
Right, fall and winter. Yep. But we understand and recognize the urgency. So I hope that helps. I know. This is a conversation that's ongoing, right?
Okay. Very good. Anything else on 4? 3, 4. And then goal 5, just a little under 4 where it says regularly update the board on the COVID grants. Is it a number missing there?
Yeah, that's a formatting thing, thanks.
Yeah, is it?
I've got it between
Yeah.
versions.
So it should be 5 and then 6, 7.
That would be 5, 6, 7.
Yeah,
Thank
okay, I
you.
just saw that. Yep.
Good catch.
Good to add 220.
Yeah,
It's a
that's.
big initiative.
It's a big initiative. It is.
Dan?
So I know Bob had commented on 3.
Oh, yeah, let me look. Let me see what he said.
Trying to put a timeline to it, because I think he and he's spoken at other meetings. I think some of us have as well, about kind of revising the budget timeline and process. And I think there's also a sense of wanting to have a timeline on that, so that if there's going to be things that we get ahead of it for the next budget season. So I think.
And maybe we could add partner with the town or some, because I think it's a conversation we need to have with the town.
Yeah, and I think that, as the goal to improve and make it efficient, whatever else, the board is directing me, the superintendent, to come to you sooner with that calendar so we can have that discussion. I don't think you need to have it in the goal, so
Yeah.
I hear you, and that's what we'll do.
Yeah, it's, I promised him. The conversation will happen. Can't guarantee the outcome, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's a discussion, right? The process we follow for a reason. We want to revise it and adjust it and, improve it on behalf of the board. We'll do that. That's, happy to do it. As long as I don't need the budget next month.
Okay, well, I think we're there.
So we'll work through that language, get it
Yes.
back out to the board, and pick it up again at our next meeting. Is that right? Or do you think
I mean, how does everybody feel with the language? I mean, are we comfortable to vote tonight and authorize those changes to be made?
I think it's probably better to get a full draft and then have a hopefully shorter discussion
Yeah.
and vote at the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
and
please.
yeah. Were you going to say something?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay, yeah. So, yes, hopefully, I mean, if there's any other comments on the goals, I would encourage, let's have that conversation tonight so that hopefully next meeting, because it's a big meeting, we're just agreeing that the changes that we discussed were made appropriately and we're approving. If that's not the case, let us know either now or very soon, but hopefully.
We'll compare notes tomorrow and get the
Yeah.
draft out. and then
Sounds
get
good.
it to everybody.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for your contributions, for working together. It's important, and it's important work, so thank you. Okay. Comments from the public.
Hi, Fatimi Yang again. Hearing out loud from a Board of Ed that we don't want to hear from experts is astonishing. When we don't know something, when we don't master something, when we don't understand something, hearing from an expert, it's why it's important. Because learning from a school district, hearing from an expert, learning from the teachers, listening to the students, all can coexist together to get us to a solution. We have an issue in New Canaan. We need to address that issue. We need to address it to our community. We need to address it to our students. And from the time I moved to this town, which was 17 years ago, almost 18 years now, New Canaan always has been the ground for excellence by listening to people who know better than we do, by learning from people who have done the work and have gotten results better than what we have. That's how we have improved ourselves. That's how we have been serving our students. We have to remember why we are here for. This is for the students, not for the discomfort of the adult in the room, but for the students and how we make them better every day. And when they come out of New Canaan, how they represent us better, how they make all of us proud. How when people hear, I'm coming from a New Canaan school district, it makes them want to move to our town. Experts are what got us where we are today. When we want to talk about security, we ask the police to come in. They are the experts. When there's new math to be learned, we don't know anything about it. We ask experts around the country, around the world, and around other districts to come and help us get better and improve upon what we have. But to deny an expert in a subject as important as how we accept each other just because some adults in the rooms are uncomfortable with the idea is just mind-boggling. Remember who you're working for. You are working for our students. You are working for what makes New Canaan a community. Don't let your discomfort scare you. Don't let fear lead you. Please keep in mind you're working for the students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, my name is Ethan Yang, 127 Wellesley Drive, alumni of West School, Sachs, and the 2020 class of the New Canaan High School. I'm so deeply disheartened and, forgive me, disgusted with much of what I've just seen. But I'm not surprised. With all due respect, how do you expect for us to accept this? You're going to learn without experts. Who are you going to ask? Yourselves? There's already some level of recognition that this board and our community has not been doing as well as it could do, and that there is some sort of a hole in the level of knowledge that we have in these areas. And while I have an eternal gratitude for those of you who have made efforts, and I do see you, and I have heard from you, and I appreciate you with all of my heart, I find the result at the end of the day deeply troubling and emblematic of a much larger issue that has been plaguing our town, and maybe it's been there the whole time, but I've really seen it start to ramp up in these last few years, and I'm very, very worried about where we're going next.
Thank you.
Hi, once again, Monica Capella-Camara, 194 Lost District Drive. I just wanted to say that I think that we really caved, and we lost an opportunity here. We caved into fear. I think we all assumed, or not we, but I think the certain members of the leadership assumed that you know better than the 800 people that have asked. I mean, if you don't represent 800 people in your district, who are you representing here right now? You had nearly 800 people ask you to do something, and you failed to deliver. What we just saw was a watering down. I mean, the whole reason why we need DEI is because you had 800 people telling you what they want, and you still voted with your own personal opinion. You're supposed to vote based on what the community wants. I mean, part of your mission statement during your campaign was, we're going to listen to all voices. Well, you just discounted 800 of them. I don't understand. You know, I don't understand what we're afraid of. There are ways that this can be done that don't need to fall into the category that, you know, some people have developed in their mind. And again, it's not just about race. It's about women's issues. It's about disabilities. Some of us have kids with autism. Some of us have kids who are, you know, physically disabled. These are the things that we want to talk about. You can't have a conversation about mental health and then deny a discussion around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, again, like I said, you just proved that we need it because a panel of people who all come from, I guess, similar backgrounds. I'm assuming, again, not a POC on here who's making a decision, and if there are, there's only one or two of you, and you've completely shut us out. It's really hard, and I think that you're doing the community a disservice. We could have been brave today, and we weren't, and we took the easy route. And this is such a watered down. I mean, I don't even know why we're bothering. Reading the goals now, it's absolutely nothing like what we had originally intended. And I'm understanding that was the goal the whole time, but I just have to express my frustration because I think that there was a way to get this done, but I think that everyone is so terrified because they've got their preconceived notions, and this is where experts come into play. Maybe some of the preconceived notions that you had could have been put to rest. But you're not even willing to go that far because you've already made up your mind that you know what this is all about, and so, you know, we're not going to move forward. So I just want to say I am disappointed in what happened today, but thank you for your time.
Drew McGrattan from 275 Park Street. I agree with what has been said up to this point, and they said it better than I can, but I just would say those who do not want to hear from experts, I wish you'd have the courage to say the quiet part out loud, that you don't think there is a problem, and you don't want to do anything to help those who do have a problem. And I just think that's very disappointing, and I just want to point out, I see you. I see where you're going. I see what your agenda is, and I'm not going to stand for it. And a lot of us in town are not going to stand for it. So, keep it up.
Lauren Nussbaum, 65 Whiffletree Lane. I just wanted to take a moment on the record to note that the words diversity, equity, and inclusion were removed from the goals. And I don't know when it wasn't shared. I don't know what meeting this happened in. I'm not pointing fingers, and I am not launching accusations, but I would like to know when it happened. I'm holding the 21-22 goals, and I'm holding the draft goals from tonight. And entire segments are gone. I watch or attend every Board of Ed meeting. I watched the July 18th meeting 6 times. I don't understand the process by which diversity, equity, and inclusion were removed entirely from the goals. But if that was the intention, it seems as though you've been successful. I hope my children and I hope my friends who are BIPOC will find teachers in this district who see them and celebrate them and include them. And my friends and their children who are LGBTQ will find educators in this district who see them and celebrate them. I am not necessarily of a marginalized community. I am a woman, but I have not lived in a community or in a skin that has been marginalized. I can't begin to imagine what it feels like, and I can't begin to imagine how it feels to sit here tonight and listen to this discussion. So I say to you, I stand with you always, behind you and beside you. I will keep showing up as a white woman in this community and stand with you and your children, whoever they are, however they identify, and wherever they're going, because it's going to be somewhere great despite what is happening here tonight. Thank you.
Emmy Goldenberg, 773 New Norwalk Road. So I'm not from here. I go to university in London. It's so much more diverse than it is here, and I want to parrot everything that Lauren said because I really appreciate that. Going back to what was said before, whether I've come back from university an activist or not, I've come back a better person. And I'm appalled that my younger sisters go to school where their Board of Education won't reject expert opinions, because especially when their Board of Education is evidently not diverse, and again making an assumption, but it's pretty clear. I can't say for definite, but I can only assume that expert advice is constantly sought out when it comes to sports and every other subject and goal, as was said before. So I think it's ridiculous that DEI is any different. I really hope that you reconsider not doing so, because not doing so is very deeply problematic. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jen Ladduck, Knollwood Lane, one more time. I think you all know what I think about the decision to take this language out. About how I feel about that, I agree with what everyone has said before me, and I want to go on the record to just say that I find it extremely disturbing that 4 Board of Ed members have sat in front of us and said that they don't want to learn anything more about a subject. You're running or you're guiding a school system. The whole point is about learning and growing, and yet you refuse to do that. Nobody said that it had to be a specific expert or that you had to even listen to any of their advice. I want to go on the record to say that that is really, really shameful, and you need to think about what you're doing and why you're here.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Announcements and future business. Dr. Lutzy?
Okay. At our next meeting, which is on the Tuesday after Labor Day, which has been our tradition, because otherwise it feels like it's too deep into the school year, we will be sharing our end-of-the-year fiscal report. There will be a presentation on the great work that's been going on around the planetarium. Our principals traditionally come to that meeting to give us an update on the start of school. It's not always quite so late. This year it'll be into the second week, but they will be here. And Darlene will share with us an update on our enrollment and staffing and the distribution across. That's what we have on tap so far. There'll be other things, I'm sure.
Great. Thank you.
And we'll be voting on our goals.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Well, with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session in accordance with Connecticut General Statute 1-200. The subjects we'll be discussing are strategy and negotiations and discussion of legal matters. Motion? Bill, second. Erica, all in favor? Great, thank you. Okay.
We will be going to the classroom where we can spread out a little bit. I'm thinking Andy's here.